Because God broke the law for love.
What's wrong with you people?
It doesn't matter who likes you or who doesn't like you. I like that. All that matters is God likes you. He accepts you. He approves of you. Is that true for homosexuals?
Absolutely. I believe that God's breathed His life into every single person. We're all on a journey. Nobody's perfect.
What's wrong with you people?
I don't know why you're clapping. I'm talking about you.
I'm serious. I mean, this is what's wrong with the Christian church today. We don't know who God is.
Men, are you smelling what I'm stepping in?
All right, hey everybody, we are back with Resurrected Radio. I am your host, Stephen Klaus. So we missed a week. I know, just getting back to it after 7 months of not recording, and record one episode and then I miss a whole week. I'm sorry. Life happens. I'm sorry I didn't get a episode in. Just life happened, having vehicle issues and all kind of other issues, and at one point I had lost my office keys, so I couldn't get into my office because my keys were in my office, my locked office. So just never could. I had tried, I promise I tried, but just other priorities that needed to happen. So we are back today, March 7th, 2018, Wednesday. We will be uploading soon, so you may be listening Wednesday afternoon or whenever. I'm here in my office. Gotta get some last minute prep work done for tonight's lesson, and then on with the church tonight. But for those who may be new, which to the show, which probably aren't very many, if any, and if you are, then you've probably gone back and listened and you know who I am. But just a quick refresher course. My name is Stephen Klaus. I am from Southwest Louisiana, from a little town called DeRidder. I am currently a youth pastor, bivocational youth pastor, at a Southern Baptist church, Westview Baptist. So if you're ever in the area, you can come on by, check us out. And so while this show isn't necessarily youth focused, I always keep that in mind and keep that in the back of my mind that, I have young people to teach and to disciple and all that. And so I try to hopefully keep everything accessible to that level, which is a higher level than most people think. Just because you have teen at the end of your age does not mean that you're an idiot. Many teenagers are ignorant of a lot of things of Scripture, but it doesn't mean they're dumb and they can't understand them. So while it may take a little bit of work to get them to, a deeper point of theological and scriptural understanding, it doesn't take as much as you would think. So for youth pastors who are content in, smearing peanut butter under their armpit or something to keep their students engaged, it doesn't require that. You don't have to stick with the soupy stuff, and sometimes the downright dumb stuff. They can get the deeper stuff, and we should get them to that level. Don't start with it, because then you're going to overwhelm them, but build them up to that place. Get them up to that point. That's the whole discipleship thing. But I digress. So that's me. And while this, like I said, this podcast isn't directed at youth ministry or teenagers or anything like that, definitely, like I said, I keep that in the back of my mind. Today, what I want to talk about is hits close to that area, though. Hits close to home. There we go. I couldn't get the words out of my mouth. To my ministry, to youth ministry and all that. And I'm a little late to the ball game just because, like I said, I couldn't record last week. This was a much more pertinent issue last week than it is this week, which just shows you how ADD American Western culture is. we're talking about one thing, one day, 1 week, and then the next week it's like, hey, do you remember this thing happened? Oh yeah, when was that? Oh, last week. But anyway, the big thing that was the talk of media and all of that, and on people's minds, was the Parkland, Florida high school shooting, and a terrible event that took place where a young man went into a school with armed with weapons. I don't recall what specific guns he had. I know AR-15s have been talked about, but they're talked about at every school shooting or every shooting that takes place. I don't know exactly what weapon he had, but he did have a gun, and he killed 17 people, students, and at least one teacher that I know of. I believe he was a coach, and then injured. I don't know how many more. I'm sure there were quite a few others injured. He survived. He's in prison. I don't think he's been officially sentenced yet. I don't think, but I think he's still on trial. The trial process is still going through, I think. Again, I've kept up a little bit, through news sources a little bit, kind of reading blurbs and stuff. I'm not near as in tuned with news that's going on as I used to be, just because it's just so polarized now. Like, there's no more just reporting the news. It's always slanted one way or the other, from this viewpoint or from that viewpoint, and it's all sides. That's not just like the left; it's the right too. I see that too. But and so there's, of course, as always, after these sorts of things, what is the solution? Rather than viewing this as living in like the moment and just grieving this tragedy and all that, it's seen as a problem that needs to be solved. How do we prevent this? Which is not a wrong viewpoint, I guess. I mean, America has certainly had its fair share of school shootings. I have my personal opinions about all these things, and of course, always the thing that comes up is gun control, and then the other side says, no, we need mental health. We have plenty of gun laws. We need mental health screenings, or whatever that means. I mean, what does that mean? And like I said, I have personal viewpoints on all that, and just to clue you in, I would lean more to the right than to the left. But at the same time, we Christians who are kind of caught in the middle, we want to be sensitive, and we want to be, for the most part, listen to all sides. And we should. That is a right viewpoint. We should listen to all sides and come up with a thoughtful solution. But our first thing, and you see it, if you're on Facebook or it's mostly Facebook, Twitter, Instagram maybe. I haven't really seen it as much there, but of course the memes always pop up that these sorts of things happen because we don't have prayer in school. Or usually it's phrased because we kicked God out of school, because we don't have God in school anymore. And so these sorts of things happen, One I saw a lot this last round, it's like a t-shirt design or something. It seems, if I can recall. It was like white letters on a gray t-shirt or something. And it said something to the effect of, Dear God, why don't you stop the school shootings or stop these sorts of things in schools or whatever? And then God responds, dear person or whatever, I'm not allowed in schools or something like that. And, you see variations on that meme, that concept, that idea. And so I'm going to kind of keep away from, I don't want to talk about guns or mental health or anything like that. That's for a different thing. I want to focus on the Christian response. And this idea that God is not allowed in schools. which, as much as man can, I guess he's not. As much as man is capable of restricting God, which he's not. Because back in the 60s, prayer was removed from school. The teacher would have prayer, Pledge of Allegiance, and then a prayer or something before class and all that. And then that stopped. Teachers are not allowed to do that anymore, I'm assuming. I haven't looked at all the laws, but off the top of my head, this is my knowledge of the situation. Teachers aren't allowed to initiate prayers. They're not allowed to do that because then that's, somehow the government endorsing religion. And so, because of that, and because Bibles aren't allowed in school, or at least teachers aren't allowed to have Bibles, really, or promote them in any form or fashion. Really, all the rules focus on the teachers and the faculty. I'm pretty sure students are still allowed to have Bibles. They're still allowed to hand them out. Obviously not during class times and times when they're supposed to be focused on something else, but during their free times. They're still allowed to pray during their free times, during free periods when they're not supposed to be focused on something else. And so, it's mostly restrictions on teachers and what they are allowed to publicly, make the class do, or do with the class, or do with students and things like that. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but from my understanding of just overview of the situation, that's kind of how I understand the rules. I guess I should be way better prepared. I guess if I was, this is a bigger show or something, I guess I would, if this was like a legit radio show or something, I guess I would actually do more research and preparation, but, hey, it's a podcast, I'm a guy in a room with a microphone and a computer. Hey, so, live with it. No, that was a joke. Okay. But anyway, and so the big push by Christians every time something like this happens is, well, if we would just allow God back into schools, these sorts of things wouldn't happen, or at least wouldn't be as prevalent. And I get it. No Christian who understands anything about God and is anyway right thinking about God's sovereignty and authority would say that God has no power in schools and that God is not actually in schools. He is omnipresent. He is everywhere at once. And so no one in their right orthodox mind would say, well, no, God is legitimately not in schools. He's everywhere. I think more the argument is that his power is restricted in schools because there has been a blatant attempt by government and ruling bodies that God is the concept of the Christian God is not to be expressed openly within the walls of the school, on school property. And so his power has been restricted. He's not going to work in schools until schools recognize his authority. And then he will bless and, protect and all that. Which is utterly ridiculous. I'm sorry. I hope I'm not offending anybody, but that is just... That's ridiculous. What about, and it's so obviously ridiculous when you think about it. And we don't. We as Americans just don't think about that because we're in our little bubble. We're in our Bill of Rights, freedom of speech bubble, where we have our rights as American citizens. And so the church and God and all of that fits inside this bubble. And this is, God works by the Bill of Rights and all these, and God works in this bubble, and Scripture works in this bubble. And we just seem ignorant of the outside world and what's going on and all of that, and context. Because to say that because God is not allowed in in American schools. Therefore, his protection is not in American schools. Therefore, you have school shootings. Is like, you know, it doesn't make sense because, okay, so is God's power limited in China? Because, you know, the government doesn't recognize God's authority. And so is God limited in his working in China? Is that why the Chinese church is persecuted? Because of that limitation. And same in any nation where we see heightened persecution. Is that because God lacks authority and so bad things happen to good people? Is that why the persecution is going on? Well, no. Because Scripture tells us differently. Because when persecution comes, that's that's not because of lack of God. That's because of the message of Christ. And some would argue, it's different. School shootings are different because we're not talking about God's people, and we're talking about just the general public. Okay, well, yeah, well, God's promise of provision and protection and all that is to his people and only to his people. So to even bring up the argument that God isn't protecting secular people and their children and secular organizations like a public government run school because they don't recognize him is ridiculous, because it's a secular school and God's protection isn't afforded to those outside of his kingdom. Those promises are to those inside his kingdom. Yeah, can you follow where I'm going here? Where I've been? What I'm saying? The argument doesn't make sense no matter which direction you go. So God's authority isn't restricted. His sovereignty isn't restricted. His power to do what he wants to isn't restricted. We focus on the fact that, God's protection isn't in schools, and so therefore we have these school shootings. I'm sorry, people. If God was not showing grace to American schools, we would have lots more shootings. We would not have one every couple of years, and really bad ones every 5 or 6 years. And I mean, that sounded wrong. Even one life lost is really bad. But like the shooting in Las Vegas where you got like 70 something dead, the ones where you have very high numbers. We would be seeing that all the time. You would be seeing that weekly. They would have to shut down public schools or make them into indoctrination camps where you got fences and guards and dogs and watchtowers and stuff, because God's common grace is over all schools. And when we see these shootings, it's not, they don't allow God in school, so he's not going to protect our schools. If he wasn't going to protect our schools, we wouldn't be seeing this all the time. But instead, he sovereignly allows these for, who knows, there's probably dozens of reasons. Just because God knows everything, and he knows there could be dozens of reasons he allows this. Political reasons, personal reasons for the individual families, reasons to build up his church, reasons to do all sorts of things through these things. And our job is not to get emotionalized and to come up with these goofy responses that hold no truth to orthodoxy just because we want our political way. Because honestly, that's what it comes down to. Christians want America to be Christian so that we can be comfortable. Yeah. That's what we want. We want schools to at least be, let's face it. We want schools to be Christian. We want every public school to be Christian where let's just face it, we wouldn't want evolution taught. We want creation taught and all that. I mean, we would. Now, logically, we know that would never happen, but that's what we want. We want, every school. We want the government to be Christian. We want prayer be instituted and days of prayer and fasting to be instituted, and we want, the government to preach the gospel so that we don't have to. Come on. That's what we want. We want our teachers to pray with our children so we don't have to. We want them to teach the Bible so we don't have to. We want them to evangelize so we don't have to. And we don't think about we'll pray when we hear about persecution. We'll pray for those, but in other countries. But we don't think about them otherwise. It's ridiculous. Like, for instance, I know a Christian organization right now who's their campaign to combat this rise in violence and inconsiderate nature of students to human lives is to write petitions and to petition school boards and schools and high schools and things to put hashtag to not put hashtag. I'm sorry. The petition drive thing, the thing is called hashtag number 6. But to put the 6th commandment, thou shalt not kill, or thou shalt not murder, or you shall not murder, whatever version you want to go with, on their billboard things that are like out by the road, with the old school black letters that you broke up. I don't know. Maybe your school has a virtual board. I don't know. But on the marquee, there we go. To put, you shall not murder, or you should not kill, or whatever the, version of the verse they want to use. So that students will understand that that every human life has value, and that it is wrong to kill your fellow human being, and that it's not just wrong, but it is God has called it wrong, because it's the 6th commandment. And I just thought that when I heard that, I just thought it was utterly ridiculous. First off, if you even get a school and a school board to agree to put that up, what kind of use is that? Honestly. First off, every student knows it's wrong. Even the ones who do it know it's wrong. They don't go in there and then plead, oh, I didn't know that was wrong. I had no clue that it was wrong to do this. It's not about right and wrong. They know it's wrong. They know that by the law and by human nature, this is wrong to do. Well, I'm going to do it anyway because I'm mad, I'm angry, I'm whatever. And so I'm going to do this, and I'm going to seek vengeance for, most of the time it's sort of like this vengeful rage against their school, or maybe against specific students, that just overflows to the whole student body or whatever, where it's just, I feel a certain way, and so I'm going to then take my own vengeance. It's not that, I think that this is a right thing to do. This is just a lot of times pure emotionalism driven by, probably mental issues, probably more than likely demonic issues. And so it's not an issue of they don't know what's right and wrong. And I'm just being perfectly honest. They're not going to care that it is a command from God. First off, just putting up, you shall not murder, or you should not murder, or you will not kill, that does not communicate anything about the Bible, about the gospel, or anything. Just putting it up there. Even if you put the 6th commandment up there, or the verse, Exodus, whatever verse that is. I don't have my Bible open in front of me. That's not going to communicate anything of any worth to any student or to any faculty member or anything like that. It's just not. That is useless pandering to your petition-loving base, that a Christian can feel like they're doing something because they want God back in their school, and they don't realize He's there, and that is not the approach to be taken. And I mean, it's the same with Bibles in schools. The Bible's a book. It is the truth that is contained within the book that is important. It's not just having the book present. I'm sorry, but in most schools, I know around here, the book is present. There are people with that book present, and there's students who are praying. There are teachers who are praying. They can't pray maybe out loud in class or whatever, but I know there are plenty who are praying. I'm sure there was plenty of students and even teachers praying in Parkland and elsewhere, Columbine, wherever, whatever other shooting you want to talk about. I'm sure there were Christians there who prayed, who even students who would come together and pray together, or teachers who would come together and pray together in private about their school and all that. It's not a lack of prayer, and it's not a lack of the Bible. It's sin. And here's where we get into what I have to think about it and about what should be. We're talking secular world. When you get right down to it, and I don't care if you're talking about America or Great Britain or China or Russia or wherever, we're talking about a secular world that is against God, that is opposed to God in their very nature. And the answer is not to push morality or biblical morality on them, because that's putting a Band-Aid over an infection. Oh, well, it looks good now. At least it looks like it's healing, but it's not. It's just growing deeper and deeper. And even if you can't see it under the Band-Aid, it's eating more away, and it's causing more damage than if you would rip the Band-Aid off and at least expose it and treat it. So how do we treat it? Well, you can't treat it on a school level. You can't treat it on a mass level. That, in our democracy where the people, we deal with things in mass, as a mass, by voting and petitioning and all these things. You can't do, that's not the way the gospel works. The gospel works on an individual level to save individuals. So this requires individual interaction with individual students. This requires parents foremost, and church leaders secondmost, training our high school students and our elementary students, college students, whatever, students, our young people, to, one, disciple them to be strong in their own faith, and two, to share that faith and to evangelize their fellow students, to save them with the gospel and to reach them for the gospel. We need to be praying for our schools and for our students. We need our teachers who are Christians to be praying and to be seeking, and to be growing. And the sad part is that it's not a guarantee that school shootings are going to stop. It's not a guarantee that, if anything, I would say we are guaranteed it's all going to get worse. If anything. Because we understand that when it comes to a sinful world is just going to get worse. I acknowledge that there are moments of reprieve. We've seen them in American history where we've kind of had those, I guess, moments of reprieve. I didn't live through it, so I don't, you can't see every detail of history, because people only record the highlights and only remember what they choose to remember. I don't know if things were just as bad now as just as bad then as they are now, or whatever. But from our current worldview understanding, things were better at one point. And I'm sure there were. But it's not going to take a push to, I'm against pushing for a Christianizing of America. Because I feel like that's like Christ said, making a twice son of hell or something like that. I can't remember the exact wording. But the Pharisees who travel out to make disciples of the Pharisaical system, making, they were already a son of hell. Now they're twice one, because now they think they understand God and they still don't. And that's all we do. That's all we're going to do by getting prayer in school or Bibles in school or whatever. We're going to make twice sons of hell, because we're not going to be preaching the gospel. We're just going to be Godizing these people. And of course, no one thinks about the practical ramifications. In our modern world, if you actually say, okay, we're going to open up to where teachers can lead prayers in schools and school administrators can lead prayers in schools and all that, how many are liberal teachers and liberal administrators are just going to say, okay, the only one we're going to pray to is the God of the Bible? No, you're going to have Buddhists come in there and pray. You're going to have Christians. You're going to have Catholics. You're going to have Mormons. You're going to have Muslims. You're going to have Jews. You're going to have Hindus. You're going to have Universalists. You're going to have probably Wiccans. You're going to have everything coming in there and praying. You're going to have anybody and everybody invited into schools to pray because, we want to be open. I mean, practically, that is what is going to happen if you got prayer back in school. And if you got Bibles back in school, quote unquote, back in school, they're there. Students bring them. Thank you very much. Then every holy book is going to be allowed. You're going to have teachers with Qurans on their desk. You're probably going to have teachers intentionally put like every holy book except the Bible on their desk. You're going to have the writings of the Hindus and Buddha and, all these other religions. You're going to have all this stuff. Honestly, we might be better off without. If we're talking like we got it now, we may be better off now than we are if we do allow this stuff in because of how liberal the school system is. But we don't need to be focused on trying to push this and make this a political issue like that, because that's what we're doing. We're making it a political issue when we do that. We are I'll give it this. We are recognizing that the problem is, a lack of understanding of God, I guess. But you don't want to just jump in there and say, okay, we need teachers to start, we need open prayers in school and we need open Bibles in school. Because, the Bible is a sword. You don't hand a sword to a toddler, a newborn. Okay, here you go. Take that. This is why there's discipleship, there's training. And it'd just be stupid to hand a sword to a dead man, because a dead man doesn't do anything, and we're all dead in our trespasses and sins apart from Christ. So you're either handing toddlers swords or you're handing dead people swords. And it's just like, that is utterly useful. You need trained warriors walking in there with swords. And you're just not going to get that from the school system. That comes from family and from church. So my viewpoint is, stop calling. First off, God is in schools. Where two or more gathered in my name. And I know all across this country, maybe there's a school or two or a dozen schools that don't have Christians in them, or don't have Christians who are faithful to gather together at school. Maybe there are, maybe there aren't. I don't know. But I know that there are most schools have Christians who have Christian clubs who gather and pray for their school. God's there with them. They're students evangelizing. God's there with them. This is not a lack of God's authority in schools. This is a wake-up call for us to get in there with the gospel and start evangelizing these children, these teachers, these families. We need to be sharing the gospel with these people, because we don't know when the next time they're going to walk in that school and they're going to not come out. This world is dark and it's desperate and it needs the light of the gospel. And that is the answer to everything, is the gospel. Well, that's all I've got today. We are, so hopefully we'll be back next week. Hopefully I can get back in the swing of things and nothing happens. Thank y'all so much for listening. Please feel free to share. I didn't mention last week, but this week, remember, we are on Twitter at Resurrected Worldview, or old show, at Resurrected Radio. And Resurrected Radio, Resurrected only has one R. Yeah, the second R. It only has one R because Twitter only lets you so many names in your handle. And so there's only one R in Resurrected in the middle there instead of two. So it's spelled funny. But if you search for us with the one R, we're there. Resurrected Radio. And the same hashtag with the one R on Instagram. We're there. You can follow us and keep track. I am on YouTube. I probably won't have video podcasts like this, like a video track with this, anytime soon, but I hope to publish like little bonus things, like little 5-minute things or more, on there of actual videos of my wonderful bearded face. So you can go there. I do have an email. It is still the Resurrected Worldview at Gmail. So it's still the old name because you can't change your email. But there's that, and you can message us anywhere. We're on Podbean, the Podbean website, Podbean app. You just search Resurrected Radio in there, and we pop up. You can also search iTunes, and we're there. We are on iTunes. So for you Apple users, you darn Apple users, you can find us there. But I appreciate any and all following, and please, if you do like this show, share it. You know, I'm not out for popularity. I'm out to express myself. Like, what's that old song? Express yourself, or myself. I don't know. Way aside. Look, a lot of shows, they have like 2 or 3 people and they get to banter. I have no one to banter to but my own mind. And that is a scary thing. So, anyway, thank you guys for listening. Thank y'all so much. Go like, share, follow, all that good stuff. And I hope y'all have a wonderful day. Thank y'all. Bye.